Hey everybody, my name's Nate. I'm a fourth year medical student at Rocky Vista University School of Osteopathic Medicine out here in Colorado. I grew up in Colorado. I've been here basically since middle school, now all the way through medical school. I did my undergraduate degree at Colorado State University as well as a 1 year master's at Colorado State University in biomedical sciences. I'm currently in the process of going through interviews for residency and I'm applying internal medicine with the anticipation of going into a GI fellowship at the end of that. There's also, other fellowships that I'm potentially interested in, like pulmonary critical care or cardiology, something that's procedural based. Um, so we'll see, ultimately where my journey takes me, and that's part of why I want to make these videos. All of these years of education and kind of this crazy journey of going into medical school, and I really wanted to kind of provide my perspective of, that journey. And I know there's a lot of content like this out there. Ultimately, what I want to do with this channel is do a kind of a mixture of journey and how I got into medical school, what were the events that led up to it, what it's like being a non-traditional student, and how I was able to overcome some of the obstacles that poses. That's going to be one side of it, and there'll be some videos about that. And then the other side of it, I think, is just going to be more of like clinically oriented, like differential diagnoses and how to kind of break things down in a very simple manner. I was a tutor and a mentor as I was going through medical school, and it's something I'm really passionate about. I love medical education, and I think there's certainly aspects of medical education that maybe need a little bit of revamping. I think a common thing that us as medical students run into is that there's a lot of this, online university, right? We pay all this tuition money to go to a medical school, and we end up using a lot of these third-party resources in order to kind of fill in gaps that we're missing in some of the traditional medical education. And a lot of those resources are great, and I want this to be maybe another one of those that's now, free and available on YouTube for everyone to kind of enjoy and browse through. And there's a lot of stuff out there, right? So you have like Pathoma for step one, and you have UWorld for your practice questions, and you have Ninja Nerd Science, who's really great at like being very detailed about these very complex pathophysiologies and things like that. I want this to be more of, as you're going into your clinical rotations, how can I have a framework for looking at a disease and or a chief complaint and breaking it down into its subsequent pieces and what those pieces look like in order to come to an ultimate diagnosis. That third year is really kind of the crux of medical school. The first kind of 2 years as you're going through, I think you spend a lot of time just learning what the book tells you. It's a lot of regurgitation, memorization, and it's important. It's good to dedicate yourself to those years because it lays the foundation for you to be able to think clinically going forward. If you don't have all that foundation and the understanding going into your third year of, well, this is at least having a framework of like, oh, sepsis can be caused by X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? Um, so I think what this channel will be is that transition period from the didactic period where you're really like information gathering and laying foundation to now transitioning those kind of ideas into clinical practice. And we're going to kind of go through differential diagnoses for certain chief complaints, what the next steps are going to be for somebody, for example, like we'll do a chest pain one and we'll talk about all the causes of chest pain. And as we're going through that, we'll list out each differential diagnosis and kind of break it down into what's the next first step that we're going to do and what would the treatment be if it ended up being this, and keep it very simple, very, very structured in that sense, because as you're transitioning into third year, something that I found very important was when you're on your clinical rotations, being able to discuss at least a little bit about everything is very important in order to impress your preceptors, which ultimately your third year grades are probably some of the most important grades that you're going to have as you're transitioning into residency and the interview season. I think that it lays the kind of foundation for people to look at you and say, okay, he has enough clinical reasoning and people are identifying this in this person to have intellectual conversation about patient workups and things like that. And that will be reflected in the evaluations that you get from your preceptors and the letters of recommendation that you get. And so I think it's very important to hone in on those things and at least have some idea of how to have those discussions. So that will be the other side of the channel. So a lot of it will be that, and then the sprinkled throughout we'll have kind of a separate category where I talk about my journey, and we'll talk about applying to medical school. So if you're an undergraduate, pre-med, or if you're just interested in the medical field and what the process is like, I'll lay out a video of kind of how I arrived at applying to medical school and what that process looked like. So we can even go through my med school application if that's something people are interested in. And then we'll go through kind of ERAS season. What does that look like? How do you apply to programs? How do you narrow things down? Something that I think a lot of people struggle with, and I'll kind of give you my 2 cents on that. Um, and just we'll have the duality of it so that you can kind of get a good, well-rounded picture of what to expect as you're going through medical school. Something that I felt that I really needed as I was going through medical school ultimately was I felt that didn't have a lot of guidance as far as like what are the next steps that are going to be happening and the details around that. And it's something that I sorely missed, and it was a lot of just kind of like scrambling to try to figure it out. And so I want these videos to be hopefully helpful to give you an idea of like what to expect as you're going forward, so that it's not just like all of a sudden, oh, I have like 47 different things to do. So yeah, I think those are kind of the thoughts for the day. These videos, ultimately, my goal is to make them somewhere between like 6 to 12 minutes because I know everyone is pressed for time. I'll try not to talk too fast so that if you want to put it on 2 times speed, you can bust it all out and have like, you know, let me review a differential diagnosis for chest pain, abdominal pain, whatever, before I go into this rotation, and you can bust out a whole bunch of videos. Um, and so it's fresh in your mind, and you can go in with a good framework to work with as you're going through your clinicals. Um, and ultimately, like I said, that's my goal. I want to fill in that gap. I feel like there's lots of third-party resources for the didactic portion of your education, and there's not a ton that you really focus on as you're going through third and fourth year. And I think that I want to try to fill that gap. So that's the goal. If that interests you, please stick around. I think it's going to be really great. I'd love to engage with everybody that, comes and enjoys the videos. So leave comments below, and we can have discussions there, and um, you know, we'll really get to know each other. And I think that's it. We'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you.